First of all, thank you for all coming. This is our second annual technology panel. We held one last year with great success. So we thought we'd follow up this year and change the kind of the tone of the meeting. Last year we focused on strictly VMS, and this year we're taking a broader look at the technologies that you might be able to deploy in your operation. We're going to start by, first of all, introduce myself. I'm Chuck Reed. I run the marketing group for MEI in North America. Been with the business at MEI about 6 years and been in the industry about 15. There's a lot of different technologies out there. You're getting hit by a lot of different companies, including MEI, with a lot of different things and ideas. But the idea of the panel today is to just talk about some of the tactical things you can do in the short term with investments you've already made to drive higher margins in your business. And what we decided to do is put together a panel of esteemed operators that have gone various parts in the operating and the technology journey. And really this is about a journey. When you think about success, success might be financial for you and it might be personal. And the idea is that success, again, is not a destination but more so a journey. And what we're really trying to do today is give you some opportunities to ask questions to the panelists. We really want this to be a two-way dialogue and engage in a dialogue about things that are important to your business and questions you may have as you think about deploying technology in your operation. And with that, I'll introduce the panelists. So we've asked these 5 gentlemen to join us today. Alan Drazen is the Vice President for Mid-Atlantic Vending Corporation. Ben White is President of his own business now called Vending Insights. Dan Holt is the owner of Lincoln County Vending. Dick Hansen is the Executive Director of Marketing and Sales for Buffalo Rock Pepsi. And Mark Stein is the President and co-owner of MarkVend. You can see in the handout we gave you the bios for each company and each person on the stage, and we also included a map on the back to give you some idea where these folks are located. What I thought we'd do to start out is just talk a little bit about the 5, what we believe kind of 5 key steps in terms of ideas for taking back your margins. And we've provided, or we're going to provide you, Kristen, if we provide the document, we'll provide a document which goes through these 5 steps in great detail. And each one of them can be thought of in a very independent way. You can do one or more of these or to come up with your own strategy. But the idea was to give you some ideas to suggest ways to improve your margins. So it's leveraging your payment systems. Are you doing enough with the payment systems you've already purchased? Are you talking about right-sizing your operations? Doing the things with the data that you're accumulating in your business to make sure you're right-sizing your operations? Have you tried bill recycling from MEI or from any other competitor? Have you looked at cashless? And what are you doing about cashless in your business, expanding that as you go forward? And then communication and change management. Are you doing the right things to make sure your business is evolving and they share your objectives and your goals? So those are kind of the 5 key areas, and each of the panelists here has various experience levels in each one of those. I thought to get started, what I'd do is ask each panelist to introduce themselves to you, talk a minute or 2 about their business, and then to start lead off before you guys jump in with questions. And by the way, when you have questions, can you raise your hand and we'll get a microphone to you. We're videotaping this, obviously, and we need to make sure we capture your question on the videotape. So if you have a question, raise your hand and one of our folks will make sure we get the microphone to you. But if I can start with Dan, we'll just ask each to just introduce themselves directly. And then one of the first questions you might want to address is you've bought payment systems in the past couple of years, and bill validators for now a number of years have enabled higher denomination bill acceptance with a flip of a dip switch or some other user interface setting. Maybe we can just talk for a minute or 2 about, have you enabled higher bill denominations, and if so, how's that worked for you? Where have you done it? Where haven't you done it? And what's that led to in terms of success or failure? Okay?
We have actually been accepting 5s, 10s, and 20s for probably 5 to 8 years. We do not use any bill changers or bill breakers. What we do is we're using dollar coins. We've been doing that for several years, and we'll put a couple of tubes of dollar coins in there. What we are finding, though, and what we're looking at doing is going with the bill recyclers and putting the ability to recycle the $5 bills and then give back the additional change in coins. The dollar coins work great, but they are very time consuming for the route driver to have to refill the coins, because we're going to have to refill them at every day in a lot of locations. Sometimes we have machines we actually have to go back and refill twice a day. So our goal is to add the recyclers, but only put the 5s on there since we're already doing the dollar coins.
Okay, thank you. Dick.
We are fairly heavy in recyclers right now. We have a little over 1,000 recyclers in the system, but we only we don't go as high as 20s. We only go 5 and 10. We use no dollar coins at this time. When we got into recyclers, we had well over 400 bill changers, and today we're down to about less than 50. And our goal is to be 0 bill changers at some point in time and just be total recyclers. So we think a lot about the recyclers. We think that's a great product to have out there. So,
thank you. Ben.
Good morning. My name is Ben. Nice to see everyone. What I ask each of us in this room, no matter what vending management system we use, is 3 things. One, are we being told as operators, as managers, every day that the money we generated at the point of sale made it all the way to the bank? Every vending management system should be able to tell us that every single day. Did all my money get where it needed to be? Number 2, is the VMS giving us the ability for par management? I love to manage my pars in my vending machines. If I have 500 vending machines, or 500 stores, if you will, is my vending management software letting me know that I have the right amount of the right product everywhere? I mean, that's what controls spoilage. That's what controls sellouts. You know, it's all about par management. And then number 3 is, once we're managing our pars, do we have the right products in the right place for the right people so that the spirals keep turning around? So that, I mean, those are several questions you could ask yourself, and we could discuss.
Thanks, Ben. Alan.
Alan Drazen, Mid-Atlantic Vending. We're a little bit of a unique situation in vending. We're really a branded vending company. So what we do, we operate primarily in public venues and schools, and those are our really 2 channels. We're not a full-line vendor. So in our world, we're generally paying higher commissions than normal. And with that, we take $5 bills, and at our 300 busiest machines, we take credit cards. We do have a few bill recyclers we tested, but we find that in our application, you know, the cashless works better for us. And we have dollar coins in almost all of our machines because of our high price points, and it works out for us.
Oh, at MarkVend, we accept 1s, 5s, and 10s and 20s in most of our machines. We back them up with 5 tube changers, typically with $2 tubes. We net export about $20,000 a week in dollar coins, boxes of dollar coins that are coming from the Fed and going back into the field to refill change tubes. And when we look at the amount of roll coin that we're sending back in the field to fill up coin tubes, it equals about 15% of our collected revenue. About 14.5% of our collected revenue is going back in the field every week to replenish coin tubes.
Okay. And those that have made a more recent decision to enable higher denomination bills, have you seen those bills really end up in the cash box? Are consumers really willing to put in those higher denomination bills?
I'll certainly speak from my experience with $5 bills. I mean, I remember starting to put 5s out just on one route, probably in maybe 2007, 2008. And no question, I mean, over a 12-month period, you know, to go in the processing room and see that this machine, hey, look, there's 2 5s in the stack. No, there's 4. Now there's 6. Now there's 8, you know, per collection. Certainly 5s, and I would say to a lesser extent 10s. It's what people have in their wallets, right? Mark certainly believes in this. We want to take people's money. Doesn't matter what it looks like. You know, I don't care if it's George Washington or Abe Lincoln. I don't care who's on the front. Be happy to take it from you and give you a snack in return. Seems like a fair deal to me.
Yeah.
And if people are only getting their cash from ATMs, you need to have an answer for a $20 bill.
That's right. And what do you do if you're not taking 20s, but that's what the person comes up with? Do you still have to have those bill breakers in order to take the 20, or what do you do?
now we discussed that a lot, whether we want to go to 20s or not. What we found was we were probably emptying the stacker itself, too fast, and we made it. Hopefully, it was the right decision to just go 5s and 10s. And I think as long as you advertise it well enough, with lighting on, and people get acclimated to what they need to bring in to the location every day. So 5s and 10s seem to work best for us without a problem.
Have any of you used $5 bills in recyclers?
I did when the first recyclers come out. I did, and it does work well that way. We just had some issues with the initial function of the bill recyclers we had, so we pulled those out. But it does work well recycling the 5s.
Just going back to the one gentleman said about $20 bills, you know, we're listening to each one of you. You start accepting 5s and 10s and you're using dollar coins and dollar stackers, you know, you're going to empty them out a lot faster. You know, so I've always been under the opinion if you're going to be accepting the 5s, 10s, and 20s, you know, throw the $5 bill in the stacker and then use the dollar coins. You know, are any of you having difficulties getting the dollar coins from the banking systems? Do you have to pre-order?
We're like, Mark, we have to order them from the bank each week, and we're putting at least 20,000 to 25,000 back into the system every week. But on the taking the 20s, 5s, 10s, and 20s, and I'll just give you a number to as an example. If we take in 10,000 $1 bills during the day, we'll have an equal amount of 5, 10s, and 20s in total dollars. If we take in 10,000 $1 bills, we'll take in 10,000 in 5s, 10s, and 20s. So that is a lot of additional sales that we're picking up. We'll have out of the 10,000 in 5s, 10s, and 20s, about 8,000 will be in 20s.
Wow. Do any of you do federal government activities? And if so, have you been mandated to use the dollar coins in a machine based on public law?
Yes, I mean, I come from a vending operation in Washington, D.C., right? So, I mean, it's where they're printing the money, and they're kind of funny about following their own rules. So we had to make sure everything accepted the dollar coin and et cetera, and it's part of federal.
And the dollar coin as well.
Yeah, right. But you know what? Thankfully, a lot of equipment was, you know, like we used bottler equipment, and a lot of it was ready to use it by 2008 or 2009. So, I mean, you don't have to get a brand new piece of equipment to accept or pay out dollar coins, which is a good thing.
You had briefly mentioned some issues with the bills in the recyclers, and I'm finding the same experience. Can you elaborate briefly on what you're finding? I mean, is it counting issues or replenishment or training? What kind of issues are you seeing today for maintaining?
All the above.
Okay.
Training
okay.
obviously.
So it's a learning phase.
You're right. If you look at the size we are, and I'm fortunate to have our MEM over equipment, Mike Bunt, who's really is really helpful to us to get our personnel trained, or to attempt to get them trained, and that is an ongoing process, believe me, to get people trained to handle, you know, properly. So that is probably the biggest issue we have, without a doubt, with the recyclers.
The other, and I guess it's my own theory in trying to track it, maybe you can confirm it. I believe that for every customer that puts in a 5, there's 5 that put in a 1. And vice versa. For every customer that puts in a 20, there's 4 that put in a 5 or 2 that put in a 10. Is that a safe
I've never thought.
philosophy?
Yeah, I never thought.
I'm going to go back and apply that formula and see. I have one other comment on recyclers. We're running about 75 recyclers in the field, and I wasn't really happy with the performance of the recyclers. I felt like they were much more troublesome than our typical validators, and we got a lot of support from MEI. We went back in the field and found that we treated them like normal bill validators, and we hadn't really given them the care that they needed in terms of installation. And we felt that a lot of the problems we were having with recyclers were kind of self-inflicted. And it really came back to a training issue and having our technicians understand, you know, this isn't, you know, a VN, you know, 2700. You can't just slap it in there and walk away. It has to be mounted squarely. It has to be grounded correctly. And we really saw much greater performance when we went back and did it right. So if anybody has recyclers and they're questioning the performance, take a step back and make sure you did proper care and feed in getting them put in.
Yeah, the analogy I use and I've used with other folks is a little bit like technology. When I have a legal pad, I can throw it on my desk. When I use my iPad, I don't just throw that on my desk. You just got to be a little bit more careful as the technology evolves, whatever that is.
You know, the recyclers have more moving parts. I mean, that's obvious. And that inherently is going to cause more problems, is my theory on that. And you can't fix torn bills or wet bills and stuff like that. So in your experience, do they jam more often than the traditional VNs? And is there any, has anybody considered, I mean, if you run high volume ice vending machines, you know, these things will do $600 in 2 hours. So we have to be able to accept money.
Where's that account?
These are, you know, because it's all concentrated in a couple of hours, and that's the whole thing. So if we lose that business, we're essentially lost the whole day's business. You've got all the landscape construction workers and all purchasing ice in the morning. So we've actually implemented a secondary bill validator, and we've talked to MEI about it, but it couldn't get any traction on the whole idea of having a secondary bill validator because there's some software.
I think a
changes.
secondary bill validator makes perfect sense in the situation.
Great, thank you. I'm glad you agree with
can't
that.
you just daisy chain them, MDB? And
I don't know the answer to that. I would think so, but I don't know.
We've done
the
a lot
answer to
of
that.
research on that actually, and kind of I can address it to a certain extent.
Okay.
On the MDB bus, you have devices on different addresses, and you're exactly right. You could daisy chain it, but it has to respond to a different address. Right? It has to have a different address. It's like your coin changer has a specific address. Your bill validator has a specific address. So it is possible. We've implemented it. We've done it. But it's not an MEI. The secondary bill validator is not an MEI bill validator because we couldn't get that second addressing. So I just wanted to point that out. But it makes sense to you that a secondary bill validator.
it does, and there's somebody in the back of the room who I think knows as much about MDB as anybody else. Don Merchant's there, and if you talk to Don after the meeting, I think he can probably give you some
I believe we have
insights.
talked to Don, but yeah, thank you.
Don, you want to raise your hand just so everybody? All right. In terms of anything else on bill recycling, the panelists want to talk about?
Well, my experience is kind of similar. When we put in this latest generation, we had a couple bumps in the road, but we worked with MEI and got that rectified. We were initially, through some internal miscommunication, doing $1 bills and not returning fives for change, and we fixed that, and it really helped us out with the depletion of the dollar coins.
Okay. You guys have mentioned getting more dollar coins from the banks. I've heard some folks having to pay to get those dollar coins from the banks. So you have any of you having that as an issue?
We haven't.
I find that strange, but
We
I've heard
haven't,
that.
but we have a lot of money tied up in float. We're sending out cash to buy the coins. So if we have a $20,000 inventory in our coin room, we have $40,000 in float between the on-hand inventory and the money out for the next order.
Right.
And
Okay.
we've noticed as we've put out more 5-tube changers and more dollar coins, the demands on our working capital of our cash inventory has grown significally. So
So what do you do about that? How do you manage that?
We just suck it up. It's just a cost of doing business. Yeah. But we try and explain it to our banker.
But as the float goes up in all of our changers, okay, I mean, like I said, I think we're all in agreement that we want to take money however we can, and the higher denominations. But again, I challenge any VMS system to say, look, please, I've got all these changers out there with these high, I mean, $119 sitting in a changer, $140 sitting in a changer. Okay, I mean, what steps are we taking so that each day we know that all those rolls of dollar, I mean, $25 in dollar coins fits in my pocket pretty easy, I mean, to be honest with you, right? So, I mean, we need to make sure that these computers that we've all bought and installed are tracking, where all this stuff is going and telling us. And I'm not asking it to tell us in 4-part color, with a streaming video. I just tell us so that we know, again, that our the money is cycling from the processing room out to the machine and back to the processing room and not shrinking.
The one thing I will say about recyclers, and we did some tracking early on in the system, is we saw significant growth at the machine level, anywhere between 13 and 35% actually lift by adding recyclers, which kind of caught us off guard a little bit. I didn't think we would have the additional sales with it. I thought it was more of a service aspect, still, providing for the customer the 5s and 10s, but the lift we got off of it, I thought was significant for us. So.
In fact, I was going to ask about that. What's been the net benefit? At the end of the day, you've made the investment. What's the return on that investment? Have all you've seen some level of sales lift, either taking higher denomination bills and/or using recycling? Dan?
I certainly have. I feel like our per capita spend is very, very good in all of our areas we service. So I attribute that to taking the higher denomination bills.
Okay. Anybody else?
We haven't really been able to track it because we've been making these changes so over time it just kind of gets ingrained in our operation, and we can't attribute one way or the other to it.
Well, I'm Benny.
Oh no, I think the proof is in the processing room. I mean, you're seeing the bills come in. Right? I mean, it's a vend. We got that vend, and we don't know that we would have gotten that vend before.
Right. It's about the store being open, right? I mean, if I come up, we did a study a couple years ago at MEI, and I think it's still valid today, and I won't take the time here, but if I'd ask each of you to take out your wallet or purse right now and assume that the vending machine you're going to go visit only takes $1 bills or coin, how many of you could make more than one purchase? How many of you have just more than a few dollar bills and some dollar coin? And our study a couple years ago said, and we've seen this a couple different times in public settings we've asked, about half the people in the room could make 2 purchases of $1.50 sport drink, soda, whatever it may be. And after about $3, you start to run out of exact change, dollar bills or coin. And that's pretty telling when you think about it, and we're vending operators in this room. If we don't carry a lot of small change and dollar coin, what makes you think your customers do? And so, how many people are you turning away from the machine simply because you don't enable 5s, 10s, or 20s, even just a 5? It's amazing some of the statistics you'd see if you do some analysis in your own operation.
Have any of you had a combination of recyclers and credit card readers on the machines? And if so, what have you seen?
I mean, we're doing that, and our goal at Markman is to be 100% cashless enabled by the end of the year. I don't know if we're going to hit that or not. And that stems from a belief that we don't want there to be any impediments to transaction. And in the places where we've put recyclers and credit card readers, they've been very well accepted, but we've had to use the right equipment on the right machines. And we were trying to use MEI 4-way bezels in vendors exchange revision doors, and we found that just simply didn't work. And we had to actually, in those models, go to a 3-way bezel with a recycler, and that was the way to get it correctly installed. So it wasn't quite as plug and play as we'd hoped, but I envision as we go forward that our standard will be a combination bezel either on a recycler or a conventional 1, 5, 10, 20.
Well, disregarding installation processes, what about the results with the money?
We've signed on, we've kind of accepted the philosophy and figure that the money side, I mean, I haven't looked at it. Once we made the decision, this makes sense to us long term. This is the direction we wanted to go. So we didn't go back and run the metrics on it because we think that cashless will become more and more prevalent over time, and we really want to have the foundation in place to take advantage of those transactions.
Thank you.
So it works, and it's the company we want to be, regardless of its immediate metrics.
Mark, does it make sense to put cashless? Is there a certain machine, you say you're going to be 100% cashless, but on every machine at every price point, or is there some rules you're following?
I personally think big picture, yes. But if you need to measure it over time, I think you need to start with your higher volume machines. I think if I couldn't do everything at once, I'd want to start with every machine that was grossing more than $600 a month, and then work down from there.
And what about the price point? Does the vend price matter that much, or is it more than just the overall gross revenue?
Well, I think from a cost standpoint, you really want to take transactions greater than $1. With what we've done, I still see a lot of transactions less than $1. And I know that we're really getting creamed on fees in those instances. Now, the way that we're dealing with fees is either deducting them from commissions with the client signing on to that strategy, or upcharging the transaction, saying that the prices displayed reflect a cash discount. So that's how we're trying to defer the fees expense on cashless. But when we look at who our best customers are, they're 20-somethings and younger, and when we talk to people 20-something and younger, they're not carrying cash. They're really a debit card-oriented lot, and it seems foolish to cut our best customers out of the business because we don't accept what's in their pocket.
Right.
You know, the word stereotype has been stereotyped as this terrible, awful thing, right? But when it comes to cashless, and you know, and a lot of operating thought, we do need to consider our audience, right? I sell grape soda and orange soda and strawberry soda in one place, and I sell a lot of caffeine-free Diet Coke in another place, right? Same thing with cashless. I mean, you know, if I'm going to have a major accounting firm, you know, with 14 floors of 20-somethings, I better have cashless out there. You know what? But on a shop floor, maybe not so much. You know, it depends on the population. But we should use what we know about our customers to attract the right ones at the right places.
Right. Alan, you've got a lot of experience in cashless.
Yeah, we're up to about 30% of sales in our cashless machines coming through, you know, cashless transactions, and it's growing, you know, constantly. It's just.
And that's consistent with some of the numbers I've seen from other industry OEMs, kind of 30-35% of the sales. And they've also, it was reported yesterday in the technology meeting that Casavana led, that it didn't impact the cash business as well. Their cash revenue went up as well as their cashless revenue up in the studies that they had done.
Yeah, I think we're getting a definite significant lift. And it's obvious. I mean, there's no, 5 years ago, you know, McDonald's didn't take credit. I mean, everybody did, even for small transactions. It's just, I just, very strong proponent that if you were going to be in the game, you really need to be able to find a way, you know, let your customers make sure the store's open 24/7.
Right. What about debit versus credit? Do you have a lot of requests for debit transactions? I don't think a lot of the units take debit right now, but are these 20-somethings asking about that?
Our infrastructure is agnostic.
Okay.
We've blocked MasterCard debit because of the fees issues, but if it's a Visa debit or a Visa credit, it looks the same to our system.
Okay. All right. Dan or Dick, any comments?
Well, we have some college, university campuses that have closed systems, and obviously the technology is going a different place with that. And I would say we do have the University of Alabama, which has about 90 snack machines on it. 80% of the sales, and I think Jeff can confirm that, is about 80% of the sales are off a card. Wow. That's extremely high. So that's in the closed systems. But there's a lot being done with closed systems now.
I have a question just to follow up on our cashless sales. Yesterday I heard a lot about Google Wallet and using the mobile phone. Are any of you on the panel thinking about implementing that, or have implemented the hardware to be able to accept mobile phone transactions?
The majority of our credit card heads are MEI four-way bezels, which are all Google Wallet enabled. But we have no way to tell if it's a Google Wallet transaction or a straight debit credit card transaction. So we really can't tell we can't tell what the traction is, but we have the infrastructure to accept it.
I think it's safe to say, on behalf of all the industry, anybody that's selling a cashless, contactless reader generally follows an ISO standard, and that ISO standard then allows a Google Wallet, and I believe ISIS as well, to work with those devices. And so everybody's trying to follow some industry standards that will allow you to take any kind of mobile payment or contactless payment, which is on a mobile phone or on a contactless card.
Going back to your University of Alabama, on those 80% sales, is that an internal system, or is that credit card, or what's the mix?
It's internal.
So it's a closed system to the campus.
It is, but there's a lot of technology right now, and there's a lot of conversations between MEI, Priva, where eventually you'll be able to use their action card as well as a credit card too. In fact, that's being done already at the University of Florida. So that's just a matter of getting a Priva with whatever the carrier is, whatever the card carrier is, whether it be Seaboard, Blackboard, any of those, and when they get their software talking to each other, then there's capabilities of doing both, which is done now.
I understand that, but I just want, I guess maybe from an audience perspective, to realize when we're hearing 80% card acceptance, that when you start having a college campus with an internal system, and the kids are using their ID card, you know, that's going to be more useful to them than even worrying about a credit card or a debit card or where to get, you know, change. So, you know, I just feel that that's kind of a misleading statement to say that 80% is a good number when that's a closed system that's going to be virtually accepted in the easiest way for these students to be able to apply a purchase.
Well, not to mention that's mom and dad paying for it. Makes it a lot easier.
Yeah.
Indeed, indeed. You know, we've talked about cashless, and you know, one of the things you've got to do from a cashless system is add telemeters so that you can call out and clear a transaction. We at MEI have told customers that cashless can become then a stepping stone towards telemetry and really advancing, and now the machine has a telemeter and it can do much more than just clear transactions. It can cashless transactions. It can actually report sales and alarms. Do you guys agree with that statement? Is that where you're seeing as you evolve your business, you start there and move into telemetry?
It has been for us.
Yeah.
We started out with, you know, cashless on 300, like 300. We have about 1,100 machines on our 300 busiest machines, and now we have remote data monitoring on our whole fleet. And it's been, I mean, it is incredible. I mean, managing the data, as some of the other, you know, some of the discussions been, at some of the other seminars, is a challenge because you really don't expect, you know, what you're going to get. I never knew what an alert was, and now, you know, I get alerts on my cell phone all the time. You know, our machines are, you know, in use 24 hours a day, a lot of them, and it's really great. It's great information. It's amazing. You know, we have a lot of ice cream machines, so if we lose power for more than more than 2 hours, we get an alert. Gives us time to react to it and try and save it. We've caught, you know, some people stealing from the machines because we get an alert if somebody opens a door. We have parameters. We're not servicing from 8 at night until 4 in the morning. So if somebody opens a door on one of the machines between 8 at night and 4 in the morning, we get an alert. You know, the door's open, and call a client. If I don't call the police and catch, you know, in one case, catch somebody. So it's incredible. I mean, but we probably have 6 or 7 different categories of alerts to manage now, and it just becomes a little cumbersome. It's a challenge just to get your hands around it.
Ben, I knew you have a lot. You feel very strongly in this topic.
I do. I mean, look, vending is 3 things: clean, filled, and working. Right? I mean, if my store looks good and it's got the right product in it and it's open, I'm in business. Alerts were a huge piece of the puzzle that just, you know, has recently begun to come in, and Mark can talk more about this when he gets back, but to begin to realize that I have 18 to 20 machines in a given day that go down. I mean, I never even knew that before, you know, so, you know, being able to react to that and get out there and fix them, and who knows how long they used to sit down, but we didn't even know the machines were broken.
You assume the end account would call you, right? Machines broken,
yeah, which is terrible. I don't want the account calling me. You know, a smooth operation isn't putting out fires every day, you know. But to your point about there's so much data.
Right? Well, it's incredible, and you just have to refine it to where it's most useful. In terms of these alerts, if we have a machine that doesn't take, at a high volume account, it doesn't take a bill in a day, we get an alert for that. Coin, you know, much less frequency. And then it varies by account, and you can set it up by account so that you really can manage that data at a high level to really, you know, give you what you want. But it's a work, you know, in progress to really get it to that point. We converted to remote data monitoring about 14 months ago. I would say we're 75% of the way, you know, to be efficient with it. But we've eliminated 2 routes. It's pretty much, you know, paying for itself, and we're probably having some savings already.
Did you have to hire additional people, different people, skill sets to be able to do that?
I think we should have, but we haven't yet.
Because that's one of the things that was recommended yesterday in the Casavana panel was, this isn't a part-time job. When you start down this path, you better treat it as a full-time job and take it seriously.
Yeah, I agree with that, and we're probably going to end up being there.
Now, Dick, you guys, oh, I'm sorry, question in the audience.
Would you say that the value added to right-sizing your operations or to be more efficient, the value added is much greater using the remote monitoring and telemetry than it is using it for cashless? Is that safe to say?
I would say yes. I mean, I don't have any quantified data to back that up, but it's a lot easier. You know, we eliminated 2.5 routes And if you eliminate 1.5, we're at break even. And in our world, we're using Penske refrigerated trucks. We have a union shop, so we have high labor costs. So, we're looking at $100,000 when you eliminate a truck driver and the related expenses. So right now we're ahead of the game. And I think it'll get even a little better. And if you have a larger fleet, I think the savings are even going to be much more significant. Because when you have better route density, you can really be more efficient with it.
Now, Dick, you're at Buffalo Rock. You guys are just starting down this journey, are you not?
We just started June 2011. We actually went with Easy Tracks, and first thing we did, we started in June of 2011 with 179 routes, and we are now today 148. So there was some great information inside the system that allowed us to get more productive and do a better job with our products and the scheduling. I have a lot of good things to say about where we went with Easy Tracks, and obviously that's the decision we made to go with Easy Tracks, but it was a huge culture change for us to go where we went.
Now, you haven't used telemetry yet with Easy Tracks, have you not? So you're using the base system and leveraging that opportunity first.
I heard Ben say there's a lot of data, to me there's too much data, because you got to make a decision what you want to do with that data and how deep you want to go into it and what pieces are useful to you. I think that's what we're finding out is we have so much data inside there, and we have to call Jeff all the time to say, can we change this report? Can we do this? We need to see this. And so it's been a constant process for us for 2 years to really get what's useful to us. Now we have hired an analyst inside the system to look at nothing but the system. And that's how deep it is and the potential it has. So, and that analyst will pay for himself.
Mark, you started this journey many, many years ago with Streamline, I believe. And as I said earlier, it's more a journey than as a destination of success. That's probably a good example.
Yeah, we're still refining the way we look at data, the data points that we push back against. It just never ends. And Ben's very familiar with our operation. He can attest to that. Even though we've been running Streamware over 12 years, we're still using it differently, refining our approach to it, and like I said, pushing against different points and hopefully improving our operation doing it.
Okay. Because all this technology, although the efficiency can be huge, right? It also needs to provide a better consumer experience, right? I mean, it can't just be about us getting more efficient. It needs to be about us satisfying the client and the consumer more as well. But I think that using this data for people in the office to have the control culture change, I mean, that's the huge sticking point with making all this stuff work, is changing the human beings, excuse me, and getting them motivated to want to do it correctly.
Yeah, change management I put on here is so important. You've got to sell up and down every day. You never stop selling, right? Even when you think you've sold everybody in the business,
do it again.
You got to do it again.
Well, I think that we found that several times we've made investments in technology and expected that to solve the problem. But until we incorporated it into our processes, and that's a big word for just being consistent and giving feedback, but until we really worked it into our culture, the investment never paid off. It was when we were giving, daily feedback on cash accountability, when we were looking at, scheduling by sold out and depletion levels, those types of changes. That's where the payoff of the technology came from. Just putting an orange box on a machine doesn't make you a better company. It's what you do with that.
Do you find your drivers eventually get to the point they embrace the change? The pre-kitting, the trucks aren't as heavy and they're not taking things back in as much.
I had a wonderful experience with that. I mean, every route guys resist change, right? And they all know that they're doing it the best. And I applaud all those guys, right? I'm sure most of us in here have run routes. To get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, it takes a special person. But at the same time, I mean, of all the people that I hired, and people said, I want to make a lot of money. Well, underneath that, I want to make a lot of money, really, I found was, I want to go home. All right, I want to come to work, I want to do my job, I want to go home. And when we convinced the route drivers and showed them, we had to take them by the hand and show them, had to do that. Started with one guy, then went to 3. You start with one, you go out in groups. You lead them by the hand and you say, look at all the cardboard you didn't throw away on your truck. Look at how you're going to walk out of here a half an hour before you're used to, And look at how when you collect the data correctly, it helps you go home. Once they got that circle in their head, boy, no, yeah, man. Yeah, I'm in. They love it. They'd never go back.
Are you pre-kitting in your operation then? I hear you say less cardboard.
I come from an operation that started pre-kitting in 2004. I mean, so I saw pre-kitting from, from the very, very beginning. I mean, shoot, I remember starting to pre-kit, just giving the guy a piece of paper, and he would stand in his truck and pre-kit, in his truck in the dark, at 3 o'clock in the morning when it's cold. Obviously, you grow from that and get to where the drivers are just getting their totes put in the trucks for them, and it's got tags on it, and they pull it off. I mean, they love it. It's
when you started your pre-kitting, were you using telemetry, or were you just using?
No, I started with pre-kitting before there was such a thing as telemetry.
Okay.
Yeah, I was working with a VendMax system at the time, but it was working off of sales history in order to predict pre-kitting.
So in your early stages, what kind of error rate were you running?
Well, garbage in, garbage out. If pre-kitting is going to be run off of a system using historical sales, chances are about 3 vend visits worth of data are required in order to get an accurate float on what you're going to pick, right? And so the problem comes in if you're working just on history and the driver has a glitch in his data collection. I forgot to dex the machine. Okay, well now we have an issue. Okay, because now we have a vend visit with no information, and now we got a mess, right? So data, if we're going to work off of historical data, it will work, but data collection must be paramount, right? I mean, if I walk somebody through a vend visit, I tell them to do 4 things. I tell them to collect it, freshen it, confirm it, and close it, all right? So collect the money, collect the DEX information, make both of those equal to the route driver. They're both as equally as important. I want my money and I want my information. I want them both. They come together now. This ain't 1982 anymore. I need both. And then, in the confirming step, teaching route drivers to confirm that the inventory matches what's in the machine. It takes less than 30 seconds. It's going to save them an hour a day. And I know, I understand they got to be led by the hand, but once they get that, yeah, it's there. It does work without question.
Thank you.
Were your questions about pre-kitting errors, was it about filling orders to bad data or bad polls in the warehouse?
Well, we've had some experience of trying to use it on historical data, but because of inconsistency of demographics, sometimes going back to what he said from Paramount, that it's hard to predict that. And we had some folks get a little discouraged because they were looking at an 8 to 10% error rate, and I'm telling them that, hey, that's not a bad error rate, considering, we have historical data, but we have a lot of movement, we have a lot of demographic changes, so, it's not only now.
I mean, 10 items in a column doesn't allow for a lot of randomness, so it's a pretty narrow window. I agree with you. Once we built our systems around telemetry data, it's very hard to imagine going back. Because the telemetry data really, it just is what it is. You're right where you need to be.
Dan, any thoughts? I know you've started this journey as well.
We've been pre-kitting now for about 2 years. We're finding it to be very efficient. Our route averages have gone up between 16 to 18,000 a week per route. We're finding that our drivers are much happier. We asked them in a meeting recently if they wanted to go back, and nobody did. Our drivers basically walk in the morning, pick up their food. Their truck is already loaded for them. When they get back, they take their handheld and their money bags off, and they download the handheld and they go home. We want our drivers out there working vending machines instead of unloading their trucks and loading the trucks in the morning. So we wanted to try to maximize the amount of time they spend in front of a machine. And most of our guys are working approximately 50 machines a day. It's been very efficient for us. We're finding our fill rate is very high because the warehouse won't be out of product, but while they were driving around and they had their trucks filled with product, they were constantly running out of something on the truck.
Right.
So we're finding our fill rate is actually much better, having much less damaged product. Pre-kitting is definitely the way to go.
When we had the rolling warehouse model, we'd say that, you know, the trucks would leave in the morning with 3 days inventory, and by their second stop, they'd run out of something. You know, just it's the worst of all possible worlds.
You know, Ben, you mentioned earlier, you know, this is all about the consumer experience as well. Do you have evidence? Do your clients then talk about, you see the efficiencies, are they seeing it as well? Do you get comments? Do you win new business as a result of having those efficiencies, and can point to those as, hey, I'll be able to tell you when your machine's not working long before you have to call me, as your old supplier did?
Well, we struggled with that for a while, because when we got into pre-kitting and telemetry, you know, the efficiencies for us were fantastic, but a client and they don't care.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't. They don't see, nor do they have any interest in the back end of how it gets to the magic machine. You know, the machine needs to accept their money, and the thing needs to fall out of the spirals so they don't have to shake it. You know, but I think that pre-kitting can benefit the consumer experience, because this data does tell us every day what machines had more than 3 sold outs, so that we can see that, concentrate on it, take corrective action. You know, the data gets to be insane, but if we can manage by exception, okay, then we're actually correcting our problems each day as we go forward. That's making us a better consumer-oriented organization.
Right.
You know, and
I have a little different take, a little different answer to the question. Nobody calls us up and goes, wow, you know, you guys are doing a great job. People only call us up when we're not doing a great job. But I know that the quality of the products in our machines are better now than they were when they were bouncing around in a truck for 3 days and then being put in a machine.
Yeah.
So that's got to add to the consumer experience. And I think the payoff for us isn't people calling us and complimenting us, but it's an extremely high account retention rate. You know, we're doing the job. The machines are full. The product is fresh and wholesome, and the system is running very smoothly. And there are not a lot of, oh my goodness, our machine's been empty for a week. I mean, that doesn't happen.
No.
So I think the proof is not in the compliments, but in the fact that we're not losing accounts.
Yeah, and it's very important.
And for us, the proof is, because of the nature of our business, our client, we pay higher commissions than probably anybody anywhere. And we're really in the real estate business. We only get a machine location if we could generate a lot of revenue for our client. So when the machine's up and running, they do notice it. They notice it, one, visually, because they're out, they see the machines every day, but they notice when they get the check every month, and we pay some enormous checks.
Per square foot.
It is. We're you know, that's our business.
Never heard about it. Referred to as real estate business. That's
well, it is.
I like that. Yeah.
We haven't, we're in our second week of our first division with pre-kitting. So we have a lot to look forward to. I obviously think that that's a tremendous way to go. However, with Easy Tracks, we have been forecasting for a little over a year now, which is, it's still coming off the inventory off the rolling truck, but it still works the same as pre-kitting. It tells you what to take in, and if your people will do what it tells them to do, then you'll be fine getting into pre-kitting. We did a lot of work for about 2 months before we rolled the first pre-kit, and to make sure that they were following the forecast and all the information was good. And once we found the information good and we started, it's been, we can see the benefits. Actually, in 2 weeks, we've cut an hour and a half a day off. We started with 3 routes, and every route's been cut an hour and a half a day.
Do you see pre-kit by forecast as the end of the journey, or do you envision a day when you would supplement that with telemetry?
I think at some point we will do some telemetry, but I think the majority of it will not be telemetry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what about cashless?
We're only about 10% cashless right now.
It seems like if you go cashless, telemetry is a gimme.
Right.
You know, tracking that way.
Yeah.
Comes along for the ride almost, right? And Dick, why do you say you don't see telemetry as today, at least, as a big part of your go forward?
Well, first of all, with the number of pieces of equipment we have, I mean, the expense for us to get into telemetry would be pretty good price for us because we do have quite a few pieces of equipment. Unfortunately, we trailed a little bit in the technology area, and once we got started and it started rolling, obviously we saw the benefits of it, but we have such a large equipment base out there right now, we'll have to methodically go through that. And I'll be retired for all that happens.
You're going to go home, huh?
Yeah, you're right. Everybody wants to go home.
Dick, or Dan, anything you want to add?
I can remember when I got involved with vending years ago. I was a Tom's snack food distributor, and we were at a convention or a owners meeting, and we're riding the bus back from an event we attended, and there was a guy who was a longtime distributor. He sat maybe 3 rows behind me, and he was talking about how he had just put bill acceptors on a snack machine. And his next statement was, I'm going to put bill acceptors on every machine I have. And you could see every head in the place turn around and look at him. And look at where we're at today. My vision actually is that one day we'll have a credit card acceptor on every machine we have. And that we'll be able to use that telemetry information to help pre-kit our routes better, become more efficient. It may be a wild dream. We may not be able to afford that for some time, but I believe that day may come for us, and we'll be able to take every type of payment out here and increase our sales and also make our operations much more efficient.
Yeah, it's good analogy. Mark.
I'd like to kind of state the obvious from our experience at Markman, and that each time we added a layer of technology, we added a layer of machines to maintain. So when we went from a conventional company without decks to implementing decks, now all of a sudden there was another thing to maintain and repair. And then when we went to cashless, there was another layer to maintain and repair. Telemetry, the same thing. It's a whole nother layer of complication that if it breaks, the system falls apart. So we're maintaining a much more complicated infrastructure to get the benefits of it, and we'd never go back. But you can't assume that if you add these additional layers that there won't be additional overhead with it. So you need to be prepared for that.
So the implication is the overhead and the training, right? You've got it's all this constant training.
Right, and you need to be sensitive to it. You have to understand that, decks not working is just as critical as a machine not accepting dollar bills. Everything has to work for the system to hold together.
Because the principles apply to vending machines, office coffee stations, or micro markets.
Yeah.
It's the same delivery system, right? I mean, one of the things I used to think about is that we were actually transforming from just a vending company to a product distribution company, right? I mean, a localized, single serve, immediate consumption distribution company, and that's a different way of looking at it from just vending machines.
But you have to do that with the margins as tight as they are. You've got to be able to bring those efficiencies out of your business, right?
Yeah.
You need the margins on your end, and you need the extra sales from the consumer viewpoint with the extra technology.
I mean, if I have 500 stores out there, vending machines, if I think about just making sure that I want to have baked lays in every machine, okay? I want to have it, or I got to have it, or whatever, okay? But 500 machines at a 10-count column is 5,000 bags of this stuff, right? And if I should have, that at a par of 6 instead, because, think about that. That's, whatever. It's 40% less of that product that had to come into my building and get moved around and go out. That's a lot of product. Yeah. Par management is key, and unfortunately, you need computers to do it.
Right.
I'd like to add to your comment that, in sitting through Brad's discussion the other day on the micro markets, I found it strange that a lot of the details that were coming out of that were the basic element of what we should be doing daily, whether we had telemetry, whether we had a management system, whether we had cards in our pocket. And what was surprising was the emphasis on that. And I'm like, well, wait a second. We should have been doing this for years. So I appreciate you making that comment and bringing back the details.
I agree.
Buffalo Rock, we have about 100,000 pieces of equipment in the tray. How are you recruiting the guy that can work on the 2013 computer and a 20-year-old vendor at the same time, Ben?
You're asking me?
I'm asking any of you.
Okay, because that's a great question, right? We need to begin to find this blend of computer geek who's also willing to change a compressor, you know? Right, but that's the person that we need. I absolutely, I'm proud to say that I know there are people out there. You know, I met a young woman who graduated from a Lincoln Technical Institute, okay, in the Maryland area. And, you know, her training was AV equipment, right? And how to install alarms. But it was that perfect blend. I mean, AV equipment is high-tech, you know, security alarms are high-tech, and yet here was this person willing to crawl around and run wires, right? I met another gentleman who, God bless him, I love him. You know, he's exactly the right guy who knows how to blend the two. There are people younger than me who are now data savvy and don't even think about it, right? I mean, the people in their late 20s or early 30s, they don't think about how to use a smartphone. They know, you know. So finding those people who still, and they're humans, thankfully, are still, they want to be independent. You know, a great thing about being a tech is you don't have a boss over your shoulder every minute of the day. You know, you're zipping in and out of these buildings doing your thing. But each layer of technology becomes more complicated, no doubt. But I still believe in human beings, that they are out there. And I mean, I think it's just interviewing the right person. Hard work ethic, attention to detail, dependability, and courtesy. Those are the 4 things I look for in anybody I hire. They got that, we're good.
We've had some experience with that recently, and we've used 2 different approaches. And our company, we only have 2,000 machines, so it's a much smaller operation and much more of kind of a one-on-one, kind of hand-to-hand combat kind of a situation. So the first was, we started with a older teenage kid, not even a 20-something, and brought him in and really apprenticed them through our inside shop. And it took a tremendous amount of patience on our part to kind of watch this kid grow up. And he made all the mistakes that you get with a high school kid. It's like, you know, Kyle, get out of bed and come to work. And we went through probably 18 months or 2 years of really helping this kid grow up. And now, a couple of years into it, we have a rock solid, loyal, appreciative young person who grew up with a video game culture, who can look at a machine and visualize what's happening with the programming. And we think we're developing a really strong resource. But it really was a 3-year arc with a tremendous amount of patience early on. And I actually went to one of our supervisors last week and said, you know, I'm really glad you convinced me to stick with Kyle through all the ups and downs, because now we have a mature, solid, long-term employee. The other thing we've been doing is to prep equipment and to deal with the demands of our business. We've been running Saturday shifts, and we've been inviting our route drivers to come in and work on the weekends, prepping and working on equipment. And we pay them equivalent to an overtime wage to come in, and we see who has the talent, and we match the task with the talent. And then as we recruit another technician, we're drawing from a pool of route drivers who are dependable, they know how to work a system, they've shown us over a couple of years their ability to grow and learn. So those are the 2 approaches we've taken.
For what it's worth, in the Philadelphia area, I'm on a board of directors for the local VOTEC program in the School of Philadelphia, and they have a booth here at the show. And that's been a really good experience for both the industry and the school, where the industry really partnered. We provided free equipment, and I'm proud to say that MEI has actually a couple of graduates that are stars for us. And you know, those kind of programs, if we could get some proliferation across the U.S., they can become that trade school, because you had to do the trade school work yourself, as opposed to maybe partner with some school districts. So it's worked in Philadelphia. I don't know if it worked anywhere else, but it certainly has worked well there. Any other questions from the audience?
Just wanted to confirm, Dan, you had mentioned your success with the pre-kitting. Is that with the remote monitoring or telemetry?
No, we are doing it by historical data only, and it works very well. It's like it's been commented on several times today. It's all about the information you put in and out. We're actually even doing schools which are very up and down. You know, they may sell really well. One day you may come in, they're turned off. But we're doing our schools, and we've actually seen our sales increase. So if we've got good data in there, you'll get a good result.
And one of the things that was brought up with, I think it was the super session with micro markets, and use the slide where look at the tote and the returns. Is it easy to manage that inventory? I mean, I can see it where if you short fill on your pars because you didn't have enough because of whatever reason, but it's hard for me to understand the value of it's overstock, and now I've got to rehandle that inventory off the truck or back into the warehouse.
We chose not to bring anything back. We leave everything at the site.
In the machine?
In the machine. It stays in the inventory.
So if it doesn't fit in the auger, you stuff it in the bottom?
We don't stuff it in the bottom. We leave it in a organized container underneath. We just felt like that it was much better than putting it back on the truck, driving around all day, bringing it back to the warehouse, having somebody touch it again, put it back into a box, bring it back out the next day, take it out. What if it comes back the next day? I mean, it could be handled, several times. We didn't want that. We think the product quality is going to be much better if it stays there, and we monitor to make sure they put that up. I mean, it's a big penalty for us if they don't put it up. That's the first thing they do when they walk in, is they put that leftover box up. But we do not bring anything back.
And Ben, what's your theory and philosophy and how you deal with it?
It's not what you expect, it's what you inspect that matters. That's it in a nutshell for me. So if we're having a problem with things coming back, then forgive me, but let's grab someone, let's go in the warehouse, and let's start counting. Okay, when in doubt, count it out. At Markvin, I know he has a gentleman who would be watching for poor inventories from route drivers, and if he saw that he wasn't getting inventory information that was correct, he would put him in inventory jail. So he would put a setting in the VMS and force the guy he would have to inventory the machine every time he went there. Drivers change their habits when they get stuck in inventory jail, I can tell you that right now. But for returns and spoilage and that, I mean, boy, just the power in taking a virtual number from the computer and taking some time. You don't have to do this forever. It's 2 weeks, one route driver, or a couple of weeks in a couple of accounts. Let's match the actual with the virtual, and if it's not right, then let's find out why. To your point, we're all in our business, and we're putting out fires, and we're running around every day, and we're in our business. Getting this stuff to work does require looking at our business and stepping back, which is tough to do in the middle of the day when you've got everything else going on, which is why dedicated people are key to making the change management work. But sit down and physically count something and compare it and do it for a week. I mean, you'll be amazed at what you learn. And then the numbers start to match together, and then it does work. And then showing that to the route guy and going, look, dude, this works. Don't tell me it doesn't work, because it's right there. Oh, and by the way, your buddy over there, I'd have you talk to your buddy, but he already went home, okay? Because he made it work, and now he's already watching TV. So let's pick it up.
And does it make a difference on the scheduling system that you use? Is it dynamic scheduling that say, in order to right size and be more efficient?
I don't think you have to start with dynamic scheduling. I think you start with static scheduling. I mean, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? You start with static if that's what you got. And when you're doing it right, the static schedules that are wrong start to pop up. Like if you're looking at, let's say you're reviewing your data and you're looking at machines with less than 75 vends between vend visits, and you start to see that information and you see that you're doing 20 machines a day with 30 vends or less. Okay, bang, there it is right in front of you. Holy cow, we have this schedule Monday, Wednesday, Friday, let's just statically change it. I mean, it's an improvement.
We actually created at MEI a productivity report that identified piece of equipment that weren't being worked at the right levels, and they can print that on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly, and all 14 divisions have line of sight to that report where they're looking at each other going, to Ben's point, you know what, somebody's doing it right, somebody's doing it right, so somebody can get there. If somebody's doing it right, everybody can get there.
Yep.
So,
in your experience with MEI, and this may not be the right question to ask you guys, but can you quote the report off the top of your head that is the best report that you use for route management, for fill rates, for inventory levels, for par levels, for being able to say, oh, this report's telling me I've got 30 fills per op, per fill, per service?
The best is going to be the daily check-in report.
Okay, so okay.
It'll tell you, it'll give you a real good snapshot of your business. It'll tell you how many sold outs you had in each machine, what your waste was, if they collected.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that, and it does manage it by machine on that per route. I was just looking for something that you may use, and maybe I can get that at the booth. But
I can tell you the best thing we did when we got MEI, we created what we call the war room, which was every day that the driver came in and they started checking in from the day one we started in 2011, the ASMR supervisors had to sit down with a route person and they went over every ticket. And to this day, they still do. It's a quick look at every ticket to find out where the errors and opportunities are. So that's something we do day in, day out, every day.
It's what you inspect. That's right.
Just for curiosity, are all your routes paid incentives besides a basic rate, or are they paid strictly on incentive?
Ours are hourly in sales.
So they get a percentage of the sales.
Right.
So besides the flat rate, there is an incentive for them to make sure their data is accurate.
Correct.
Would all of you say the same?
Ours are a combination of salary and commission.
We pay commission only. When we went to pre-kitting, we were able to drop our commission a couple of %. We're looking at trying to go to units and having a base with a unit type pay.
Mm-hmm. With that, I want to thank the panelists very much. As you can see, everybody's at a different stage in the technology adoption, and that's fine. Again, it's taking that elephant and biting it into smaller pieces and moving forward, but try to do something. The whole idea here was to initiate some dialogue about doing something different. And with that, we thank everybody for attending, and have a great show.